Hi there, Timothy Linsdau, video producer, Christian, and love science, and I'm observing the 50th anniversary of the Apollo mission to the moon that put the first men on the moon. I've been reviewing the different parts of this vehicle, this machine they had to build to get them up there to accomplish this. And today I want to talk about the command and service module part of this huge vehicle. Like and comment on my video and subscribe to support my channel. Keep this bringing this stuff to you. Thank you. The command and service module is two things together. The command module is the capsule where the astronauts rode up in and come back in. You know, the one with the big cone-shaped thing. It has a big heat shield on the bottom of it. And it's the capsule. That's what we're used to seeing. The service module is the barrel-shaped thing on the back attached to the capsule, and this has fuel and all the things that need to keep the astronauts alive in the command module. All the things you would need, and that these two pieces sit on the very top of the Saturn V and top of the rocket, except for the escape rocket, which is on the very top of the capsule. That's used in case of emergencies. But that whole unit, and it also has a rocket engine on the end of it, the service module. That's the rocket engine that propelled them back to Earth. Well, it propelled them all the way to the moon and back to the Earth. Remember, you don't need to fire a rocket more than what's needed because you're in a vacuum. The only thing that's going to change your course or speed is going to be gravity, such as the Earth and the Moon. So they fire up that rocket as needed for the length of time they needed and the amount they needed to get back. And of course, that's all worked through and calculated and tested all before this ever happens. But this whole command and service module was built by North American Aviation and North American Rockwell. It was, of course, operated by NASA. It was designed to go into lunar orbit and tested endlessly. That whole system weighed 32,000 pounds. Its dimensions, it was about 36 feet high, top to bottom. It was about almost 13 feet in diameter. Now, a single rocket engine on the Saturn V was 12 feet in diameter. Just to give you an idea of how big that whole vehicle was. It took 5 of those engines to drive this whole vehicle eventually into orbit, and the command module and service module and the lunar lander all the way to the moon. The whole system. Volume was like 218 cubic feet. Used fuel cells to drive it. Designed to be in low Earth orbit and then to be in the lunar orbit. There were 35 of these built over time. 19 were launched. 19 were operational. 2 failed. 1 lost. Talk about that a little bit. In Apollo 1 of White, Jaffe, and Grissom. 3 astronauts were killed in Apollo 1 when they had a fire. This, unfortunately, is the part of exploration, learning, and testing. And there were a lot of things in there that weren't right in the first one. Number 1 was having a pure oxygen atmosphere. Made it very dangerous inside that capsule because any spark of any kind would set that thing on fire, which was corrected. After the fire, they went through every piece of it and discovered things that weren't right that would have been very tragic to have happened in any space effort, and perfected it, which is, some would ask, why didn't they perfect it in the first place? And I guess it's just the difficulty of learning how to travel and survive in space. And of course, it's a tragedy. And of course, it would our space program, this wouldn't be the end of tragedies when what happened to 2 shuttles missions where both crews were killed. That's pretty sad stuff. Very brave people that do this stuff. This system was first launched in '66, and the last launch was the last crew going to the moon was in '75, I think. Sorry about that. I have my time off a little bit. Let's put it this way. The command module, service module, was last launched in 1975. We can be sure of that. So it's again, it's 2 principal components of the capsule and the service module, holding everything the capsule needs. It served as the mothership when they went to the moon. The lunar module would be released, and they would maneuver around, and they would join together, the lunar module and the command module together, so they can move back and forth between it. And then when the lunar lander went down, that command module and service module became the mothership. Originally, now this I didn't know, was kind of new to me, that the very first design was a contained system of a rocket that would land on the moon. The module, the lander, was all one piece, and it would land on the moon. And that's kind of Buck Rogers 1950s kind of thing you would think of. And but the problem is it would have taken an enormous rocket to get that much weight up there. As it is, the Saturn V was the biggest rocket vehicle ever made, most powerful ever made, to make this happen in the first place. And you imagine something would be even bigger to make that work. So that was when they came up with these different components with the lunar lander, service module, and the command module in pieces. And as they went, it's like the rocket stages. When one stage was done, it was discarded and burned up in the atmosphere until they got down to the service module and the lunar lander and command module. That's what went to the moon. And then when they were done with the process of landing on the moon, they joined the lunar lander and the command module together again to get the astronauts in. The lunar lander was released, which orbited the moon for some time and then crashed into the moon. And of course, before that, the astronauts, command module, service module all went back to Earth, where they ejected. The service module burned up in the atmosphere, and then the capsule itself with the astronauts re-entered the atmosphere and were able to land in the ocean. Quite a process. But the service module had everything in it to keep them alive in the command module, and that was what that was all about. The thing I talked about before, where they would land a whole system on the moon, it was a direct ascent vehicle, is what they called it. And realizing in time that it would have been impossible, it had to have a rocket impossibly big to make it work. And that's when they came up with this component system that worked amazingly well. I watched some documentaries. Numbers of the engineers thought that this thing would not, in Apollo 11, would not be the one that they would actually land with. It would just be another test because it was just so complicated, but everything worked. They did have a few warnings and issues with the computer. Remember, the computer in the LEM didn't have as much power as my watch does, but it all worked. And also, I'll talk about that in the LEM article, so something that happened. But anyway, that's another part of this giant vehicle that was put together to make it to get to the moon. What an amazing piece of history. Remember, all this was done before all the computers that we have today. It was put together in slide rules, if you will, to make this happen. So take some time to observe this history and recognize the importance of this of this anniversary, 50th anniversary of landing men on the moon. It's pretty interesting stuff. So, all right, like and comment on this video, subscribe to the channel if you will, and just get out there like this big event and make it a great day.